Part 2. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 11. Bang bang bang. The gunfire rang out, but Orgrim had no intention of evading it. He rushed forward with the bullet in his hand. There was a burst of pain in his chest. Orgrim knew that he had been shot, but it didn't matter. Given his physical condition, after the bullet is taken out, he will probably be healed by daybreak. Arriving in front of the Navy's line in a few steps, Orgrim knew that he couldn't let them organize an effective counterattack, otherwise it would be really difficult for them, numbering more than 100 or so, to win. Only in a chaotic situation could they exert their full potential. Come to their advantage. With his strong body, Orgrim directly knocked away the Navy in front of him. At the same time, he swung the doom hammer in his hand towards Major Fink. Major Fink seemed to be a little too panicked. In addition, he was surrounded by Navy soldiers and could not dodge. In a hurry, he instinctively pulled out the saber from his waist and held it in front of him, as if he wanted to take the Austrian soldier. Like Grimm's warhammer. "Fuck you," Orgrim roared angrily. The warhammer in his hand slammed onto Major Funk's saber. There was no resistance at all. The next moment, the heavy warhammer hit Major Funk's head directly. Blood splattered and brains flew all over the floor. Major Fink didn't even have any extra words or any last words. He was blown away. The surrounding Navy were all stunned. Although they would also follow pirates are fighting, but such violent and bloody scenes are still rare. Everyone is amazing. The white knife comes in, the red knife comes out, and even the missing arms and legs are considered awesome. I have never seen such a big scene where the head explodes directly. Huh? In fact, it's not that Orgrim always likes to stare at people's heads and hit them. The main reason is that his height advantage lies here. From top to bottom, the best angle is to hit the head. Swing it. Moreover, this kind of offensive is full of deterrence, not to mention lethality, and can destroy the enemy's morale very quickly. In the past, it was very effective against those ragtag pirates, but now against these corrupted Navy, look, it was very fruitful to go up there. Orgrim killed the little Commander Fink with one hammer, and showed no intention of stopping. The warhammer in his hand was like a tiger, opening and closing, and the Navy swept by his warhammer. It was really unspeakable pain. He would die if he was robbed, and he would be injured if he was knocked. Hank, a reckless man, also slashed a sailor on the shoulder with a knife, and directly removed his arm. The blood covered his face, but he didn't care. He wiped the ground and then shouted, "Kill all these bastard Marines and let them see how powerful we are. Kill the Navy. Fuck these bastards to death." The shouts came one after another. After Beckman killed a Marine with one shot, he stopped. Then he raised the butt of his gun, pointed the muzzle at the headlight of the naval base, and shot the light with a bang. Went out. Then he repeated his same trick, firing more than a dozen shots back and forth, knocking out most of the headlights in the naval base. Once the lights went out, there were not many places with light, and the square fell into darkness again. The chaotic situation broke out further, and the Navy were all panicked. They didn't know how many pirates rushed in, and there were sounds of fighting and wailing all around. Those pirates seemed to be menacing and killed everyone they saw. In just a few moments, the team that had just been assembled was dispersed. As the saying goes, a defeat is like a mountain. Once the team dispersed, the Navy just ran for their lives. Some ran towards the gate, some ran towards the base. Anyway, even if you don't resist, it doesn't matter whether you can run faster than those pirates. As long as you run faster than your colleagues around you, you can live a little longer, right? Orgrim has already led his people into the naval base building, and along the way he not only killed the unlucky Major Fink, but also killed 2 lieutenant colonels. However, he also suffered several knives and shots, and was covered in blood, including his own. There were also some from the Navy. They looked extremely ferocious and their aura was very scary. At this time, Colonel Banu was also panicking. He was a fat-bellied fallen Navy man with no fighting power at all. How could he have ever been killed by pirates in a naval base? Diamandi, I am a partner of your Don Quixote family. You have to help me kill all these damn pirates. Colonel Banu asked for help to a man next to him. This man had oil paint on his face and was tall, but he was not as strong as Orgrim and looked a little thin. This man was Don Quixote. Diamandi, one of the top cotters under Doflamingo. He is here to collect money. For the Don Quixote family to develop so quickly in Bihai and become one of the leading forces, it is indispensable for him to, when dealing with these navies, it is normal for both parties to do shady business together and help these fallen navies launder some black money. However, Diamandi was also a little depressed at this time. He had just arrived this morning and was ready to I stayed in this base for one day and left tomorrow with the share of the Don Quixote family. Why did I encounter something like this inexplicably? Pirates attacked the naval base? Are all pirates so rampant now? This trip he didn't want to step into the muddy water, but the problem was that the 500 million Baileys of the Don Quixote family were still in this base. Can the pirates let them go? Definitely not. Therefore, Diamandi he sighed and said, "Don't worry, Colonel Banu, I will help you kill these pirates, but, our Don Quixote family is in business, right? I give 100 million Baileys. As long as you can kill these pirates, I will give your Don Quixote family 100 million Bailey, and I will make it easier for you in the future." Colonel Banu said without hesitation. "Then it's settled," Diamandi nodded and said. He is still very confident in his own strength. He is a devil fruit user. The flying fruit is still very powerful in his opinion. The clothes on his body don't look light and fluttery, but they are all made of steel. Control. Ordinary people can't break through his defense, and the Don Quixote family is also a powerful force in the North Sea. How many pirates in the North Sea can challenge them? It can't be such a coincidence, right? Just when he was thinking about this at that moment, Orgrim kicked open the door of the base director's office, and then walked in with a sledgehammer. As soon as Orgrim entered the door, he saw Diamandi and Colonel Banu. He was also a little confused. Colonel Banu was easy to recognize. He was wearing a navy uniform and had the rank of colonel. He was obviously the boss of the 103 base. But who was this flashy guy next to him? Diamandi was still there at this time. He was young, and Orgrim didn't recognize him for a moment, so he just thought he was a maverick marine. Anyway, there are a lot of flashy guys in the Navy. It was late at night and he was in a hurry, so he didn't have time to wear military uniforms. It's normal. Diamandi glanced at Orgrim and breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He was not a famous pirate in the North Sea, so he should be easy to deal with. He straightened his collar slightly and walked forward. "Come, stand in front of Colonel Banu and say, 'Who are you?'" Orgrim raised his eyebrows and responded. "Orgrim." Diamandi thought for a while. She had never heard of it, and she was even more determined. Then she said, "My name is Diamandi, and I am from the Don Quixote family." But before Diamandi finished speaking, he saw Orgrim charging towards him with a sledgehammer. Orgrim didn't hear what he said clearly, because this was not the time to talk nonsense. He had to control the base commander quickly, otherwise things would change later. How could he have the time to listen to this flashy guy's nonsense? Damn idiot! Diamandi cursed, feeling that he had been slighted. Just when Orgrim's sledgehammer came over, Diamandi confidently raised his windbreaker, trying to block this attack. Hammer. Orgrim was a little confused when he saw this guy lifting up his clothes. What kind of operation is this? Iron cloth shirt? Although he was surprised in his heart, he did not hesitate in his hand. He hammered over and heard a bang sound. The sonorous metal collision sound erupted, which surprised Orgrim. But it was just a surprise. Diamandi was stunned at this time. He only felt a huge force coming from his hand, and the next in an instant, his feet lifted off the ground, and then his vision went dark. The powerful force shocked his chest and made him feel tight. He couldn't hold it in, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Before he could recover, the person hit the wall, directly smashing a big hole in the wall. The person flew out and disappeared into the naval base in an instant. He flew several hundred meters away before falling on the streets of the town. After lying down for a while, Diamandi got up from the ground. He felt like his whole body was falling apart. He was in severe pain and was even more frightened. He was very sure at this time that he couldn't beat the guy with the sledgehammer at all. Don't even think about fighting back to the naval base, just run away. At the same time, Orgrim also frowned slightly. He always felt that the guy just now seemed a bit familiar, right? Fancy, what the hell? Orgrim frowned and said. But it was not the time to care about that at this time. He set his sights on Colonel Banu, who was already scared to pee, and asked, "Are you the boss of this naval base? Reading books on May Day will be great. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Grab a deposit now." Activity time, April 29th to May 3rd. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 12. Colonel Banu was obviously a man who was very afraid of death. After Orgrim killed Diamandi, whom he regarded as his savior, with one blow, Colonel Banu compromised and surrendered without hesitation. Then, in the name of the base commander of Naval Base 103, he announced the surrender using a radio phone bug at the naval base. When daylight came, Orgrim's men had almost packed up all the loot, and the Marines were locked up. Sitting in Colonel Banu's office, Orgrim's feet were raised on the desk, and he was holding a very luxurious fine cigar. This was a high-end product shipped from the Western Sea. In Orgrim's small town, if you have money, you have no place to buy it. Luxury, corruption, but I like it, ha 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 ha, Orgrim mocked with a smile. At this moment, Colonel Banu, who was leaning against the shackles with his hands and squatting tremblingly by the wall of the office, did not dare to complain at all. On the contrary, he wanted to flatter Orgrim. "Master Chui, just like it? I have many more here, so I'll give them all to you," Colonel Banu said flatteringly. "Do you still need to give it to me?" Orgrim said with great disdain. Yes, Master Chui, you can get whatever you want," Colonel Banu said quickly. While Orgrim was enjoying the depraved life of a naval base commander, Beckman opened the door and walked in with a smile on his face. He looked very happy at first sight. "How's it going?" Orgrim asked directly. "The port has been controlled, and Hank is leading people to find those noble lords." Beckman responded with a smile. Orgrim nodded, and then asked, "Is the loss big? So what about the harvest?" The loss was not small. More than 30 brothers died, but most of them were new recruits, which is normal. Beckman shook his head and said. However, neither he nor Orgrim was obviously too sad, and they didn't seem to take these casualties seriously. "This is normal, the old guys in the defense team should take care of it, and the new ones, you are just cannon fodder. Only by fighting a few more times can you be considered one of your own," Orgrim said softly. "Not to mention these, compared with the losses, our gains are simply too rich," Beckman said with a big smile. "Come on and make me happy." Orgrim also asked with great interest. "Bailey alone is worth 1.5 billion. These navies are too rich. Colonel Banu has 800 million Baileys in his personal treasury," Beckman said with a smile. 800 million? Just a colonel in a naval branch, Orgrim was also shocked. Then he looked at Colonel Banu and said with some emotion, "I would have known that being in the Navy would be so rich, should we also give it a try?" "Colonel. Banu smiled awkwardly and thought to himself, you, my uncle, are so cruel and capable of fighting. If you had become a navy earlier, wouldn't you be an admiral now? Master Chui, that's not my bailey. I only have 300 million baileys, and there are still 500 million baileys in it. It's Pele from the guy you beat up last night, Colonel Banu explained. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then asked, isn't that flashy guy a navy? Not the navy, he is a cotter of the Don Quixote family, his name is Diamandi, have some cooperative relationship with me, Colonel Banu quickly explained. Orgrim and Beckman were both stunned. What the hell is this? You beat up a cotter of the Don Quixote family last night? Beckman asked with some surprise. Orgrim also looked confused. Thinking about it carefully, that guy seems to be Diamandi, so he looks familiar, but is he too inexperienced? Gone with one hammer? I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't even listen to what he was talking nonsense to me, so I gave him a slap. Who knew the cotters of the Don Quixote family were so good? Orgrim waved his hand and said. Beckman frowned slightly, and then said the Don Quixote family is different from the navy. Although he felt a little worried, Beckman soon laughed again and said, but it's okay. They like to do dirty business. We are pirates and we don't conflict with each other. Maybe there can still be cooperation in the future. Isn't it just a matter of beating up one of their cotters? He didn't kill them, there should be no problem. Ha 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 ha, you are right. Even if there is any problem, it doesn't matter. The worst we can do is fight them with real swords and guns. It's hard to say who is stronger and who is weaker, Orgrim also said very confidently. In his opinion, at this point in time, although the Don Quixote family is powerful, it is not so overwhelming that people can't breathe. Doflamingo may be as powerful as he is about the same age and should not be his opponent. What about the other cotters? Judging from Diamandi's strength, it is estimated that no one is his opponent. Maybe they have mastered the power of armed color haki, but it doesn't matter without the natural element. Orgrim's hammer will not be weaker than armed color for these people, right? As for the more dangerous sugar, at this point in time, it should not have joined the Don Quixote family. It seems from various inferences that although Orgrim and the others cannot compare with the Don Quixote family in terms of cotter strength, they are worthy of a fight. They can both lose, and Doflamingo is a young man. The master's thoughts are probably not going to be fought to the death with him. Let's not talk about these, let's continue talking about the harvest. This time, our most important harvest is not the harvest of Bailey's treasure, but the harvest of equipment. Although these navies in the North Sea are trash, their equipment is still very powerful. They use the latest muskets and artillery. Yesterday these powers have not been exerted here, otherwise we would really have to weigh it. Beckman said with some excitement. On warships, there is a big gap between the navy of the branch and the navy of the headquarters, but in terms of equipment such as guns and artillery, everyone is the same. The navy is the strongest under the world government. The great force of force deterred even the navies in the four seas and seas, and they were given very excellent equipment, all of which were of the latest models. It is true that guns, ammunition, and artillery can be bought on the black market, but most of them are outdated and old things. Some big forces can make it themselves, but Orgrim obviously can't. In this way, the harvest of arms in the navy is indeed very exciting. There is no need for the broken ships we drove from the town of Ogolan. The Predator will be left behind, and the rest will be replaced by warships, right? How awesome does this drive? You can also pretend to be a navy. Orgrim said with a smile. I think so too. Regardless of performance or firepower, these warships are much more powerful than our ships. As for the impact of robbing warships, Beckman himself laughed when he said this, and then continued to add, we have even attacked the naval base, and we still care about this impact. After Hank and the others have robbed the nobles in the town, they will get at least 2 billion belly in the strip. Then we will go to Mignon Island, take the brothers to have a good time, and also do some more work there by the way. Arm your team. Improve your strength, Orgrim thought for a while and said. Colonel Banu on the side heard that they were going to Mignon Island, and he was also panicked. Damn it, if you say this in front of me, is it possible? Silence you. Orgrim glanced at Colonel Banu, and then said with great disdain, don't worry, I won't kill you. If you want to arrest me, just come here. A waste like you, sitting here, the position of Navy captain is always a good thing for us, isn't it? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 13. Orgrim and his group will definitely enter the Grand Line, and even enter the New World, which is the paradise of the strong. But not now, now they are just a bunch of soldiers and generals. Except for Orgrim and Beckman, the rest of them are not very good. Gangplank and Hank are malleable talents, but they are still not good enough now. Far away. If they just rushed into the Grand Line without thinking, the first half of it alone would probably be more difficult for them. After all, they are not the Straw Hat Pirates, so they can have such good luck. Whether it is Beckman or Orgrim, both of them have unanimously decided to hone a powerful team in the North Sea. How to train this team? It doesn't make much sense to always rob small towns and fight against those garrison troops. After all, most garrison armies are not as awesome as Orgrim and the others. Otherwise, why would the navy be needed? Robbery of towns, countries, etc. is mainly for the purpose of plundering wealth. This is what most pirates will do, but basically few of these pirates can get ahead because they are too salty. Of course Orgrim and Beckman don't want to be salted fish. Robbery is definitely necessary, but it is also very necessary to fight hard and eliminate the good. Therefore, they have already thought about it. They want to turn the North Sea upside down. The Navy will fight. If you want to chase them, come and chase them. The pirates will fight if they meet them. They are enemies in the same industry. In this way, war feeds war. After the war is over, the wealth stolen is used to recruit troops, and then the war continues. Only when Orgrim and Beckman are satisfied will they enter the first half of the Grand Line. When the time comes, continue to implement this routine, continue to exert force in the first half of the Grand Route, take advantage of the situation to rush into the New World, and fight against the real heroes. After listening to Orgrim's words, Colonel Banu quickly shook his head and said, don't dare, just like what you said, Master Zui, I became a navy just to do well for myself. Now I know how powerful you are, Master Zui, how dare you argue with Mr. Chui? When he said these words, Colonel Banu had already scolded the damn Major Fink again in his heart. What kind of news are you asking for? Are you saying that Husgarot Orgrim is easy to bully? Are you okay now? You're being knocked on your doorstep. You've lost all your hundreds of millions of dollars for a mere 29 million belly. If you bastard hadn't died so quickly, I wouldn't be able to spare you after these pirates left. At this time, Colonel Banu had already made up his mind. If he could really send these pirate masters away alive, he would definitely not report this incident to avoid being resented by this master. What's more, if he reports this kind of thing, he probably won't be able to continue doing it. How will he make money in the future? But he didn't want to think about it. Could he keep this kind of thing a secret? By the way, Banu, my pirate group captured all your naval bases. If there is a reward for this, as a professional like you, how many do you think is appropriate? Orgrim asked Colonel Banu again. Colonel Banu's face twitched and he said, Master Hammer, I don't even know what kind of pirate group you are. As soon as he said this, Orgrim and Beckman were stunned for a moment, and then they both laughed. Ha 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 ha, speaking of it, we have too many things to do and we are all rushing together. We haven't even thought of a name. Orgrim, do you have any good suggestions? Beckman asked with a big smile. Doomhammer Pirates, Orgrim, a guy who is incompetent in naming, asked after thinking about it for a while. Beckman's face stiffened slightly and he said, just call it this yourself. Don't mess with us, okay? Yeah? I also think it's pretty good. Orgrim scratched his head and said with some embarrassment. According to your opinion, we might as well call them the Warhammer Pirates, Beckman complained. It sounds very vulgar, okay. I guess there are 80 or not 100 pirate groups with this name on the ocean, right? Orgrim said with a smile. After a slight pause, Orgrim hesitated and said Blue Dragon Pirates. I think back in his previous life, he started some kind of Qinglong gang in school. Young and Dangerous were more popular at that time, and everyone followed suit. The result was not good. Later, their head teacher found out about it, and he changed their name to Qinglong Gang. The damn Blue Dragon study group. It's simply a lifelong shame for Orgrim, so now he's thinking about starting some sort of Blue Dragon Pirates to avenge his past shame. How stupid of me to ask you this question. Beckman shook his head helplessly. What's that called? Why not just call them Warhammer Pirates? Orgrim said angrily. Didn't you just say that Warhammer is too crude and low-end? The sea is full of names like this? Beckman mocked with a smile. Huh, what's that? Once we become famous, who will dare to use the same name as us? Orgrim said very domineeringly. Beckman was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, what you said makes sense. Ha 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 ha, isn't that natural? If we are really famous, wouldn't anyone who uses the same name as us be looking for death? Orgrim laughed. After all, if you encounter this kind of thing, you will definitely be beaten to death. If you are encountered by the Navy, you will definitely pay close attention to it and kill them. Most people have nothing to do, and of course they will not do it again. Using such a famous name. Although it's still a bit crude, let's decide on this for now, Beckman said with a smile. After settling the topic, Orgrim asked Colonel Banu enthusiastically, now you know, we are from the Warhammer Pirates. Judging from your professionalism, I, Orgrim, am worth how much is the bounty? Where is Ben Beckman? Colonel Banu hesitated for a moment, then bravely answered, Master Hammer, your strength is very powerful, but strength is not the criterion for measuring the bounty. The key is it depends on your threat level. With your style of attacking the naval base, if you disagree with me, if I really report it to you, I think it must be at least 80 to 90 million, or even 100 million Baileys, right? Only 100 million? Orgrim muttered with some dissatisfaction. But he soon understood that it was more than 20 years ago after all, and Roger the Pirate King was still Golden Roger, and the bounty had not yet been inflationary. Basically, only the pirates in the Grand Line may have a bounty of over 100 million, which is rare in the four seas. The bounty of the big pirates in the New World may become terrifying. This guy Banu said that he is worth 100 million. He probably said it just to please himself. If he really wanted to offer a bounty, it would be as much as 80 to 90 million. This is because he directly captured the naval base as soon as he debuted. For the world government, this was a slap in the face. For the Navy headquarters, it is also a matter of disgrace. For pirates, let alone looting towns, even if they loot a small country, they are probably not as guilty as Orgrim and others. Think about it, the pirates later the Empress Boya Hancock went on her first expedition, plundered a country, and finally became the king of the Shichibukai, with a bounty of only 80 million belly. Thinking of this, Orgrim left Bai, took out a stack of bounty money from the slave's drawer, looked through it, and found that the guy with white beard only had a bounty of 2 billion. This time, Orgrim felt a lot more balanced. Thinking about the expansion of the bounty system, at least it would have to wait until the Great Pirate Age to start. Orgrim smiled, then pointed at Beckman and asked, "What about him? How many do you think there should be?" Colonel Banu hesitated. He didn't know what was so powerful about Beckman, so he replied with some guilt, 30 million. "I'm $1 million more than Fox Hunter Sparky." By co-writing, Beckman cursed angrily on the spot. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 14. Mignon Island is a notorious evil island in the North Sea. There are basically no good people on this island. Evil forces of all sizes in the North Sea are entrenched, including pirates, human traffickers, gangs, and members of the dark world. The average people living on the island are all serving these evil forces. Who can be considered good people? Good people cannot survive on this island for a long time. The Don Quixote family has a small residence here. At this time, the 13-year-old Don Quixote Doflamingo is sitting on a chair, listening to Diamante report. Although he was only 13 years old, Doflamingo already had the arrogant and domineering temperament he later had. After all, he was born as a celestial dragon. He has short light blonde hair, orange sunglasses, and a young but fierce expression. As the boss of the largest gangster family in Bihai, he really looks like that. Orgrim, after Doflamingo heard Diamante's words, he murmured softly. Then he waved his hands and said, "Don't worry so much, it's only 500 million belly, I can still afford the loss. Go and recuperate, Diamante." "Thank you, young master." Diamante responded very quickly. "It's nothing, you are my family, and nothing is more important to me than you." Doflamingo smiled and said with relief. This is not a tactic used by his subordinates. At least for Doflamingo at this time, he really thought so. A cotter of the Don Quixote family, it's his family. And he has no family now, so he should cherish these cotters even more. After Diamante went down, the slug Torre Ball stood on Doflamingo's side behind him. He said, "Hey, Dover, aren't we going to find this trouble for Orgrim? He robbed us of 500 million yuan. Doflamingo was silent for a while. Although he was young, he was indeed precocious and had already passed the time for such a battle of wills. "It's not necessary. It's just a pirate. He robbed the Navy base, which is equivalent to a slap in the face of the world government and the Navy headquarters. Let's just add fuel to the fire and let the news out." Doflamingo thought for a while and then said. After a slight pause, he smiled evilly and continued, "This matter seems to be just a misunderstanding, and it is not aimed at our Don Quixote. If they can survive the retaliation from the world government and the Navy headquarters, they may be able to cooperate in the future." "I see," Torre Ball responded softly. Without continuing the topic, Doflamingo sat up straight and asked, "How's the business with the Navy headquarters going?" "Their people have already come to Bihai, but only a brigadier general came. It seems that they don't care much about this transaction," Torre Ball replied. "Brigadier?" Doflamingo raised his brows slightly, and then asked, "Who is it?" "Bogart," Torre Ball said. Doflamingo was stunned for a moment after hearing this, and then he said with a smile, "It seems that they don't pay attention to it, but judging from the current situation, they don't have much. He only focuses his energy on the world. Bogart is not an ordinary commodore. He can even be regarded as a rear admiral or lieutenant general of the Navy headquarters." "Why?" Torre Ball asked in surprise. "Because he is the adjutant of the famous naval hero Lieutenant General Garp. For a person like him to be responsible for escorting a devil fruit to the North Sea, he is already considered very important," Doflamingo said with a smile. As a former celestial dragon, he knew a lot about the inside of the world government, and he also knew a lot about the Navy headquarters. Just when Doflamingo and Torre Ball said while thinking about these things, Mignon Island also welcomed a new guest. They sacked Navy Base 103 and recruited a group of ruffians in the town to replenish the cannon fodder. Orgrim and the others. The number of people in the group has reached 230. Just as expected, they abandoned the miscellaneous ships they snatched from the town of Ogalan and left with 5 warships from Bihai 103 base. So the team at this time consisted of 1 whaling ship, 5 warships, and a total of 6 ships. Although the number of ships was reduced by half, the overall power and combat capabilities were increased several times, with complete artillery, sufficient ammunition, and manpower. They were all issued a musket. Of course, this does not force the younger brothers to use it. If you insist on using a big knife to chop off people's heads, then that's up to you. Overall, if it weren't for the fact that most of these younger brothers they are all a mob. Orgrim and the Warhammer pirates can be called a force in the North Sea, and their troops are getting stronger. Many villains at the port of Mignon Island watched these 5 warships disembark. The large group of strong men were also shocked, and these guys didn't look like the Navy, right? Judging from their experience of often dealing with villains, these people not only didn't look like the Navy, but actually looked like pirates. Baker. Man got off the Predator, lit a cigarette, bit it on his mouth, and looked at the surprised looks of the villains at the port of Mignon Island, with a smile on his lips. Although most of them are just fake at the moment, the deterrent effect is quite good. Ordinary bastards probably wouldn't have the guts to provoke us. Beckman said with a smile. Orgrim also walked over with a sledgehammer on his back and responded with a smile, if you fight a few more times, you will no longer be the same. We are pirates after all, and we have been driving the Navy. Ships are not the same thing. Think of a way to package and sell these warships. Isn't it said that Mignon Island has a very powerful shipyard? We now have enough money to customize a powerful ship. Although they robbed the Navy's warships and formed a medium-sized fleet, it looked quite powerful and felt good. But in fact, Orgrim only had more than 200 people in Manchuria, so there was no need at all. No matter what kind of fleet is formed, if these young men are dispersed, they will be easily defeated one by one. Therefore, Orgrim's idea is to sell these warships, build a more powerful ship on Mignon Island, and carry all the people in one go. As for the fleet, let's wait until the size of the team expands to a suitable level. I will arrange this. Beckman smiled and said. Don't worry, we finally came to the famous Mignon Island. Let's have a good time first, Hank. Orgrim patted Beckman on the shoulder, and then called out to Hank. Hank quickly ran over and asked, Master Hammer, what are your orders? Tell my brothers, let's be cool today. I've spent all the money I've given you. Orgrim said with a smile. Got it, Mr. Chewie, I'll tell the brothers right now, Hank laughed and said. Then, a large group of people merged into Mignon Island, a chaotic and evil island, and many local snakes got the news immediately. On the one hand, he was curious about the origins of these people, and on the other hand, he also restrained his subordinates not to provoke these guys of unknown origins until they found out the information clearly. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 15. As one of the local gangs on Mignon Island, the Don Quixote family can naturally be regarded as the local gangsters on Mignon Island. Not long after Orgrim and his group arrived on the island, Doflamingo received relevant news. After listening to the descriptions of his subordinates, a strong man over 2 meters tall, carrying a sledgehammer, and a gangster who came in a Navy warship, coupled with Diamandi's explanation, Doflamingo immediately understood. The Orgrim who robbed their Don Quixote family of 500 million belly is here. Doflamingo was also a little confused. He didn't expect that fate would come so quickly. Guys like Orgrim would actually come to Mignon Island. If he didn't come, forget it. Doflamingo had no intention of provoking these guys who were bold and seemed to have some strength. He just used some dirty tricks behind his back to add fuel to the flames. He was not an enemy anyway. But now that he is here, Doflamingo feels that he has to say hello and meet these bastards, otherwise it will be too unreasonable. After all, if any news is leaked in the future, it is said that their Don Quixote family has been he robbed 500 million, and then someone came to his door without even daring to let out a fart. That was also a blow to the prestige of the Don Quixote family. Therefore, after finding out where Orgrim was staying, Doflamingo quickly rushed over with several of his cotters. Fire and Rose is a tavern on Mignon Island. It is said that the place is well informed and is engaged in intelligence business, so Orgrim, Beckman, and others rushed here as soon as they landed on the island. At this time, they were sitting in the corner of the tavern. There were many large and small wine glasses on the table. Not only were there several strong men from Orgrim, but there were also several hot girls who were invited to accompany the drinks. Real or fake? Do you have another kind of power? Beckman looked at Orgrim in surprise and asked. Orgrim did not shy away from the people around him. He picked up the wine glass and took a deep sip. Then he smiled and said, "Why are you lying to me, real? After killing that naval base, I felt like I had changed a little bit. I have been thinking about it these past few days, and I did have a new kind of power. As a time traveler, Orgrim does have a golden finger, but there has been no movement on this thing for a long time. Orgrim thought it was over here, but the result was good. After leaving Navy Base 103, he was secretly given another benefit. Orgrim felt that this might be related to the fact that he had determined the pirate camp. After all, they had looted the naval base, and there was no way back. This Orgrim has also been studying this power himself these days, and he has almost figured it out today. Now, he calls this power the power of night. Based on his exploration in the past 2 days, he has also figured out some things. In the dark night, his state will gradually increase in all aspects, and when he reaches the darkest moment before dawn, he can fully enhance his strength by twice. This surprised Orgrim, although now, in gradually increasing to twice the strength in the dark night, it seems useless. Those who should be defeated are still invincible. But that is because of Orgrim's own strength limitations. He is still young now, and he will definitely become more powerful in the future. Stronger, as the strength increases, the power of this ability will become stronger and stronger. If he has the power of a Navy Admiral, a King's 7 warriors, or a 4 Emperor in the future, he can activate this kind of power in the dark night. In this state, isn't the strength skyrocketing? Maybe one can fight 2, or even 3. Of course, this kind of power is not unlimited. If you choose to turn on this state during the battle, after dawn, the power will disappear, and its own strength will also drop by about 20% to 30%. According to Orgrim's observation, this weak state will continue until the sun sets in the afternoon. There are gains and losses. For this, the side effect is something that Orgrim is happy to accept. Overall, this power does more good than harm to him. After all, it is not a passive skill. It can be controlled and turned on by oneself. It is completely acceptable. At the same time, Orgrim he also sensed a piece of information, that is, he still has the last time traveler benefit to receive. If nothing else, it should be related to the devil fruit, but the conditions for this activation have not been clarified yet. There is no taboo. Beckman didn't hide anything from Hank or the others. Once this kind of power is used in the future, he will definitely not be able to hide it. In addition, the stronger he is, the more beneficial it will be to them. So there is no need to hide it. After briefly listening to Orgrim's words, Beckman said with some envy, "You are really I don't know what to say about you, you're so enviable. Ha 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 ha, this kind of weird ability is not uncommon, right? I heard about that big pirate Big Mom, it seems to be an infinitely powerful and indestructible body." Orgrim said with a smile. "There is such a saying, but I don't know if it is true or not. Let's just assume that she is real. There are too many strange abilities in the sea." Beckman nodded and said. After a short pause, he took a sip of wine and said with some emotion, "I didn't plan to become a devil fruit user before, because that would make me a landlubber, but now, I'm a little envious of you bastard. If you have good abilities, I would like to try it. Isn't this simple? We are pirates now, so we will grab some devil fruits when we have the chance. Moreover, we now have a lot of Baileys with nowhere to spend them. I heard that devil fruits are occasionally circulated on the black market. Isn't Mignon Island claimed to be connected to the entire island? The dark world of the North Sea? Buying a devil fruit shouldn't be a big problem, right? Orgrim said with a smile. Just as Orgrim was bragging and chatting with Beckman and others, the door of the tavern was suddenly pushed open. This kind of thing did not attract their attention. But soon, the people in the tavern became a little restless. Some people whispered something like Don Quixote family and did not dare to stay in the tavern any longer. They left one after another. It can be seen that, the Don Quixote family still has a certain degree of intimidation on Mignon Island. It is precisely because of this phenomenon that Orgrim and others looked at the door of the tavern with some curiosity. Then Orgrim was a little surprised because he saw Doflamingo, who would become a famous figure in the future. Although Doflamingo was only 13 years old at this time, he had grown very quickly and looked to be about 1.78 meters tall. He doesn't look like a child, but more like a young man of 17 or 18 years old. Now Doflamingo has also put on his iconic pink flamingo feathers, and has orange sunglasses on his face. There was an evil smile on the corner of his mouth. Yes, it is evil. Although this word is terrible, I have to say that it is very appropriate to put it on Doflamingo. Overall, Doflamingo doesn't look like a gangster at all, but like a youth idol singer. Orgrim is looking at Doflamingo, and Doflamingo is also looking at Orgrim. He is tall, very strong, and his face looks very powerful. I can't say he is handsome, but he is not ugly either, but he is very intimidating overall. Anyone who looks at this strong man will feel that this strong man is not easy to mess with. Furo fura, that's interesting, Doflamingo muttered to himself, and then walked towards Orgrim. Of course Beckman also recognized the famous Don Quixote Doflamingo in Bihai. Look at this guy. He walked towards their table without hesitation, smiled, and said jokingly, you accidentally knocked away his family's cottars, and we also robbed their Don Quixote family's 500 million Baileys. Now it seems that the real owner has come. Orgrim also smiled and said, this is fate. Big discount on reading books during Dragon Boat Festival. Recharge 100 and get 500 VIP points. Grab a deposit now. Activity time, June 22nd to June 24th. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 16. Doflamingo took his trademark arrogant steps and walked to Orgrim's table with a smile. Then he did not speak, but moved his fingers slightly, and then Orgrim and the others looked for the few escort girls who came, screamed in surprise. What's wrong with my body? I'm out of control. Amid the screams, several of the hostesses were like puppets controlled by Doflamingo and left the table. Orgrim frowned slightly and looked at Doflamingo. The brothers' eyes also became unkind. At this moment, Doflamingo smiled and said, Foo, you guys, do you mind if I sit here? After glancing at Doflamingo, Orgrim's brows gradually calmed down, then he smiled and said, please sit down. Doflamingo was not polite and sat directly opposite Orgrim. Then Thorball, Gladius and other officials stood in front of Doflamingo in a polite manner. Behind him. Doflamingo was also familiar with him, so he didn't mind anything. He took an empty wine glass from the table and poured himself a glass of wine. Before I introduce myself, my name is Doflamingo, Don Quixote Doflamingo. I think some of you must have heard my name. Doflamingo smiled and said. In Bihai, there is probably no one who has not heard of the famous young master of the Don Quixote family. Orgrim nodded and responded. After a slight pause, Orgrim continued, Kazgaros Orgrim. It's you. Doflamingo smiled after hearing this and said. It seems that the young master came to see me specifically. Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Of course, after all, there seems to be some misunderstanding between us, Doflamingo smiled and said. Orgrim is a man of 2 generations, and Beckman is extremely smart, but there is nothing to say. However, Doflamingo is only 13 years old, but his words are, there is no childishness at all, which made Orgrim feel a little emotional. He is really worthy of becoming the king of the Shishibukai in the future. Should a poor child become a master early? He is obviously a celestial dragon, but he has been so miserable. Yes, a little bit, Orgrim admitted very frankly. Sure enough, you should know what happened. Doflamingo admitted it without hesitation when he saw Orgrim, and he didn't pretend to be mysterious. It seems that I accidentally attacked your cotters and stole 500 million Baileys, Orgrim nodded and said. After a slight pause, Orgrim looked into Doflamingo's eyes and asked softly then, young master, do you want to get things back together with us? Doflamingo also looked at Orgrim's eyes, as if he wanted to see something famous in his eyes. However, there was no look of guilt or fear in those eyes, and there was even more. Flamingo still vaguely felt that Orgrim guy was a little excited. Doflamingo didn't speak, and the scene suddenly turned cold. Beckman put his hand on the butt of the pistol at his waist without leaving any trace. Hank also put his hand on the handle of the machete at his waist without hesitation, and Gangplank was also ready to take action at any time. And Dons like Thorball and Gladius, the cotters of the Quixote family, were also secretly preparing to take action. It seemed that the situation was on the verge of breaking out and a war could break out at any time. At this moment, Doflamingo laughed and said, Phew, since it's a misunderstanding. Of course, there is no need to make it too ugly. I believe that you don't mean to cause trouble for our Don Quixote family. As for the 500 million Baileys, just think of it as a meeting gift from me to you. Doflamingo is flexible, and he is like a hero. He really can't figure out the details of Orgrim's group at this time. Looking at the Orgrim guy's eyes, there is a faint excitement, as if he is looking forward to taking action, which makes Doflamingo very excited. Flamingo didn't want to act rashly for a moment, because he felt that these people were either powerful or pure lunatics. No matter which type they were not easy to mess with. Before he found out the details, it's best not to become an enemy. What's more, Doflamingo considers himself a businessman, so of course he values peace. As soon as Doflamingo said this, Orgrim also smiled. He opened his mouth and said, young master is really generous and worthy of being a famous figure in Bihai. At this point, the secret smell of gunpowder between the two parties has dissipated, and the previous misunderstandings have been put aside for the time being. Phew, I think Lord Orgrim will be a rare hero in the future, so you might as well make a friend, Doflamingo said with a smile. Ha, it is naturally a dream to be able to make friends with such a big shot as the young master. Orgrim said with a laugh. Although both sides were a little hypocritical, at least on the surface, they were friends now. Doflamingo didn't know what these guys were here for. He came here because I wanted to ask about this matter. So after drinking several times with Orgrim and others and getting a little familiar, Doflamingo asked, by the way, I'm pretty good on Mignon Island, you guys, you don't know what you're doing here? If you need help with anything, just ask. Orgrim and Beckman looked at each other, and then Beckman said, now that the young master has spoken, we don't hide it anymore. In fact, we really need help with a few things. Oh? Tell me the story. Doflamingo raised his eyebrows and said. We have 5 warships in hand and want to find a buyer to sell them. At the same time, we also want to build a more powerful ship to prepare us for going to sea, Beckman said with a smile. This is very simple. I also have some methods in the dark world. Warships have always been a hot commodity. After all, the Navy's technology is still very good, although it is a second-class warship in the North Sea, but there are still many people who like it. If you don't mind, just sell it to our Don Quixote family, Doflamingo said very grandly. When Beckman saw this, he did not discuss the price with Doflamingo. He believed that as long as he and others can still be regarded as Doflamingo's friends, then the young master should not do anything dirty. As for shipbuilding, I can recommend a few good boat builders, Doflamingo continued. Thank you so much, young master, Orgrim said at the right time. Then the two parties finally finalized the matter, and then Orgrim continued, actually, there are indeed some other things that I want you to help me with, young master. As he spoke, Orgrim took out a photo from his pocket and handed it to Doflamingo. Doflamingo took it and took a look. It was a little girl about 12 or 13 years old. He frowned slightly, not knowing what it meant. This is Orgrim's sister, Karanda Neiman, and we grew up together. 2 years ago, she was snatched away by a group of human traffickers. We have been looking for her whereabouts. If you know any news, please tell us, we will be grateful, Beckman said softly. 500 million. Orgrim suddenly said. After a slight pause, he continued in a deep voice, if the young master can provide us with some precise information, we are willing to pay 500 million Baileys. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 17. In the North Sea, in the port of the town of Ogolan, there is a huge pirate ship parked in the port of this rural town that is incompatible with this place. And the flag hanging on this pirate ship is even more frightening, because this pirate ship actually hangs the pirate flag of the world-famous great pirate, Golden Lion Shiki. But it is obvious that this is not the flagship of the big boss Shiji, but just a ship of the Golden Lion pirates. But even this is enough to run rampant in the North Sea. At this time, at the port of the small town of Ogolan, there was a man about 2.5 meters tall. He looked about the same height as Orgrim, but this guy was even stronger than Orgrim. The muscles all over his body bulge like a bodybuilding madman. But what is surprising is that although this guy looks like a strong man, he is wearing very beautiful girl clothes. What did you say? Brother Orgrim and Brother Beckman robbed the nobles in the town and then went to sea to become pirates. This sturdy guy was holding a newly recruited defensive officer in the town and asked in surprise. This guy's voice was very thin, and it sounded like he was a girl. In fact, she was one. The girl, with the garrison officer in her hands at this time, could see her face clearly. She looked familiar. She seemed to be Orgrim and Beckman's sister who was snatched away by human traffickers more than 2 years ago. That's right. This guy with bulging muscles actually has a cute baby face, doesn't it match her figure at all? With a figure like this, you don't deserve a head like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is too much, let alone a baby face. This person is the sister that Orgrim and Beckman have been looking for, Karanda Neiman. It's absolutely true, this happened about more than a week ago, the guard captain replied quickly. At this moment, a big and thick pirate boy ran over, stood behind Neiman, and said, Master Neiman, Boss Shiji sent a message, we are leaving behind. All right, Boss Shiji is asking you to return to the team immediately. Hearing this, Neiman threw the guard captain to the ground, turned around and asked, is the Admiral's matter finished so quickly? Probably, the pirate boy responded. Shiji has many names, such as Sky Pirate, Golden Lion, Pirate Admiral, etc. He controls a huge pirate fleet, so many of his subordinates also like to call him Admiral. Neiman is obviously one of them. As a user with the ability of the Piao Piao fruit, the biggest difference between Shiji and other pirates is that he can fly. Therefore, this guy's scope of activities is not limited to the New World. He often running around all over the world, and few people can find his whereabouts. This time, Shiji came to Bihai because he heard about the ancient weapons here. The struggle for hegemony among the heroes in the New World is getting more and more intense. Shiji is as ambitious as rocks. He also wants to fight for the hegemony of this world and become the pirate overlord. Therefore, he is of course very interested in the legendary ancient weapons that can destroy the world. So as soon as I heard the news about Bihai, I immediately killed him from the New World. Of course, the result was not very good. Shiji didn't even get a hair here, and in a rage, he slaughtered the whole one. The island is now preparing to leave the North Sea and return to the New World. As for Kool-Aid Neiman, he was captured by human traffickers more than 2 years ago, and then by some strange combination of circumstances, he was rescued by Shiji, a freewheeling guy. It should be said that Shiji robbed the trafficker and replenished his troops. Neiman also became a devil fruit user by chance, and then she was spotted by Shiji, who took her with her to train her, and gradually became a cotter. She had long wanted to come to Bihai to pick up her 2 Kahaha brothers and join the Golden Lion pirates together. After all, in her opinion, the Golden Lion Shiji is the person most likely to aspire to the position of pirate overlord. Following the boss Shiji is very promising, at least it is more promising than being the defense officer of some rural town in Bihai. Already. It's just that the situation in the New World is very dangerous, and Shiki has to fight with the Marines, Whitebeard, Roger, Big Mom, Kaido and others from time to time. Neiman has never found the right time. This time, boss Shiji was finally coming to Bihai, and she followed him very excitedly. She even applied to leave the fleet for a period of time, and came to the town of Ogalan to pick up her brothers and make a fortune together. The result was good. After arriving, I found that my 2 brothers had killed all the nobles in the town of Ogalan in a rage more than a week ago and went to sea to become pirates. Isn't this a scam? I traveled thousands of miles to come here, but you 2 took the first step? Now boss Shiji has received news again, asking her to return to the team and prepare to leave Bihai. This is like missing out on her brothers. Neiman knew very well that although boss Shiji felt easy to talk to on weekdays, no one could disobey his orders, otherwise someone would die. Now that the boss has asked her to return to the team, she can't delay anymore. After all, she has just become a cotter and doesn't even have a reward yet. If she dares to disobey Shiji's orders, even if Shiji values her, it will be 100% there is no good fruit to eat. Even, with boss Shiji's style, it is possible that his 2 brothers will be implicated. Thinking of this, although Neiman was unwilling to do so, she could only nod her head and said, since the admiral has the order, let's not delay and return to the team. Yes, Lady Neiman, the pirate boy responded quickly. Of course, Orgrim and Beckman didn't know all this. If they knew that their sister was hugging Shiji's lap, they would probably join the Golden Army without hesitation. The Lion Pirates, right? After all, in Orgrim's view, although Shiji was deceived quite miserably in the end because of Roger's cheating, joining their Golden Lion Pirates is not without benefits, and it is said that the benefits are huge. Because you can find an opportunity to take over him directly when he overturns. Orgrim is very willing to be the takeover man. What's more, a big force like Shiji also has a lot of resources. There is definitely no shortage of devil fruits and the like, not to mention the power of domineering. There must be ways to practice it. If you can join Shiji's Golden Lion Pirates, your strength will definitely grow. Very quickly. Taking Neiman as an example, it is estimated that Orgrim may not be able to beat her now. However, these are of no use for the time being. Orgrim and Beckman are still in the tavern on Mignon Island. Are you doing business with Doflamingo? I will help you to pay more attention. If there is any news, I will inform you as soon as possible. Doflamingo put away the photo and accepted the business. He didn't mention anything like no reward. Although the friendship had to be established, the business still had to be done. Even though they were asking for 500 million Bailey, the Quixote family is not lacking, but there is no reason to extrapolate it. Otherwise, Wouldn't it be a direct loss of 1 billion in Orgrim's hands over and over again? Then thank you young master, if you can find Neiman. Orgrim stopped talking here. But Doflamingo also understands the meaning behind this, that is, if he and Beckman can help him find his sister, Orgrim and his gang will owe Doflamingo a favor. Doflamingo likes this kind of thing the most. Favors are much more useful than Bailey. Doflamingo is like a spider, weaving his own network of relationships to support his ambitions. After dropping the topic and chatting for a few more words, Beckman asked with interest, by the way, I heard that you often do devil fruit business, young master? Do you have any good ones? Can you sell one to us? Recently I've been thinking about becoming a devil fruit user. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 18. Doflamingo was stunned for a moment after hearing Beckman's words, but before he could speak, Orgrim said again, by the way, young master, the power of domineering, your Don Quixote family should be in control, right? Interested in selling us a copy? The price is good. Doflamingo thought to himself, these people are so rich. 500 million Baileys can be used to buy news. Devil fruits also start at 100 million, and based on their abilities, there is no upper limit. It's amazing. It can be sold for more than 1 billion or 2 billion. If you want to build a big ship, you need 100 million belly as the base, right? Thinking about it this way, they really have money in their hands. Of course, Ogre Mew and the others do have some money in their hands now, but they are not so rich yet. But if they don't have money, they can rob it. As for pirates, money will come quickly. If they can turn all these Baileys into strength, Austria Grim was naturally very happy. After coming back to his senses, Doflamingo smiled and said, our Don Quixote family has indeed mastered the power of domineering power. Orgrim was a little excited when he heard this. As expected, although the power of the Don Quixote family is limited to the North Sea at this time, it is not a powerful force, but Doflamingo has a great background, and his subordinates there are still some channels, and his cotters can recognize his domineering power. After all, he should have the power of armed domineering and knowledge domineering, right? Maybe it's weak now, but it's definitely there. Looking at it now, it is indeed the case. However, before Orgrim could ask, Doflamingo said directly, but the power of domineering may not be much in the New World, but in the first half of the Four Seas and the Grand Line, it is still very high-end. Therefore, this kind of thing has never been for sale. Listening to Doflamingo's words, Orgrim had to swallow back what he originally wanted to say. Doflamingo is a good person. Although there were some misunderstandings between them before, they still seem to be getting along very happily. What's more, he really wants to use Doflamingo's power and relationship to find that guy. Therefore, there is no need to fall out with Doflamingo directly because of this kind of thing. It is not cost effective, and there is number 100% chance of winning against the full power of the Don Quixote family. At this moment, Doflamingo smiled again and said, of course, this is true externally, but it is different internally. If Orgrim and you are interested in joining our Don Quixote family, I can definitely make the decision to give you a top cotter position. Whether it is domineering power or devil fruit, I can open it to you. After hearing these words, Orgrim and Beckman looked at each other, then Orgrim smiled and shook his head and said, thank you for your kindness, young master, but we have no idea of joining other forces for the time being, please forgive me. I refused. Doflamingo nodded, not disappointed at all. He just said it casually. If it succeeds, it will be a good thing, but if it fails, he will have nothing to lose. And before saying these words, he had a general guess in his mind. Although the contact time was not long, he could vaguely feel that Orgrim and others were unwilling to succumb to others, at least they did not want to succumb to themselves. Down. It's nothing. If you change your mind one day, Our Don Quixote family welcomes you at any time, Doflamingo said with a very grand smile. Orgrim and Beckman also complimented him a few words, and both parties got along very harmoniously. After some business exchanges, Doflamingo brother Ming then said, although the power of domineering cannot be sold casually, there are no restrictions on devil fruits. I will help Mr. Beckman pay more attention to it. If there are any good abilities, I will give them to you first. Then thank you, young master, for taking care of me, Beckman also responded with a smile. At this moment, Doflamingo frowned slightly, as if he thought of something, and an evil smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he said, by the way, regarding devil fruits, there is something coincidental that some of you may be interested in hearing. Orgrim frowned slightly, feeling that Doflamingo didn't have a good heart when he said this. But it doesn't hurt to listen, so Orgrim nodded and said, young master sir, please tell me. 5 days ago, our Don Quixote family, as a middleman, took over a business related to devil fruits and found a buyer. That fruit is very good, but the buyer is not easy to deal with, and our Don Quixote family is in business after all, and we don't want to ruin our reputation. Having said this, Doflamingo paused for a moment, looked at Orgrim and then continued, but some of you are pirates, so of course there are no restrictions. Of course Orgrim and Beckman heard what Doflamingo meant. There might be some plan on his part, such as borrowing a knife to kill someone, or he wanted to use this to measure the strength of himself and others. But I have to say that Orgrim and Beckman are still very interested. After all, they originally planned to find more trouble and temper the team in their hands. However, he couldn't rush in, so Orgrim asked softly, the buyer is not easy to mess with? I don't know who the buyer is. Although Doflamingo had some ideas, he did not intend to take Orgrim away. Mew, they are willing to risk their lives and keep a thin line in their work so that we can meet each other easily in the future. So he said very calmly, it's the Navy headquarters. He made it clear. There is no such thing as cheating or cheating. If you have the confidence to grab it, that's your ability, so just keep it in. Well, you can't blame me, young master. Navy headquarters, Beckman repeated in surprise. Although they don't seem to take the Navy seriously, and the naval base will rob it at will, but it is the Baha'i branch after all. There is nothing to say, and the Navy headquarters is the real maritime overlord. It's not something they can play around with. Orgrim was silent for a moment, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. After a long time, he continued to ask, what kind of devil fruit is it? Natural system? Phantom beast species? In Orgrim's opinion, anything worthy of the Navy headquarters action cannot be too bad, right? Natural type and fantasy beast species are too rare, but they are not so common. Doflamingo smiled and shook his head. After a slight pause, Doflamingo continued, but it is indeed a very powerful devil fruit. I wonder if you have heard of the Superman type poison fruit? Beckman frowned. Obviously, he didn't know or heard of it. After all, devil fruits are still rare. Before, Beckman was just a defense officer in the countryside, and it was even less likely that he had seen any devil fruit illustrations. It's just that he roughly knew some information about devil fruits, such as the categories of natural type, superhuman type, animal type, etc., but didn't know much about the rest. Orgrim was shocked, although he had never seen a devil fruit before. And he has never seen a devil fruit illustrated book, but he knows the poisonous fruit very well. Isn't this the ability of Magellan, the warden of the deep-sea prison, Impel City and Impelton in the future? From the strength it seems that the poison fruit is indeed very powerful. Magellan almost used this ability to destroy the Blackbeard pirates in Imperial. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 19. Obviously, although the poison fruit is superhuman, it is indeed a very powerful devil fruit. Once you get the power of this devil fruit, not to mention anything else, at least in Bihai, you will be completely able to protect yourself, and even enter the realm of greatness. In the first half of the route, you can also be domineering. As for the new world, it's a little suspenseful, but if your personal strength can keep up, it will open the door to the top powerhouse. Theoretically speaking, the ability of the poison fruit is very intractable. After it is developed to a strong enough level, once the enemy is poisoned, unless they get the antidote from the ability user, they will die. But in fact, Orgrim does not agree with this somewhat exaggerated statement. After all, if there was such a thing, wouldn't the Navy headquarters have captured Kaido so many times and just asked Magellan to poison him? How could it be his turn that Kaido would be the Yonko? Therefore, the poisonous fruit should not be so overbearing, and apart from the antidote, Ivankov's hormonal power can also suppress the poisonous fruit. Judging from the fact that Faye was rescued and cured by Trafalgar Law, the surgical fruit should also be able to remove the power of the poisonous fruit. The rest of the healing abilities should have more or less effects in this regard. Or Phoenix Marco. If this guy could be poisoned, Orgrim would stand upside down and have diarrhea. Therefore, although the poisonous fruit is very overbearing, it is definitely not the kind that Magellan said. As long as you plant his poison, you will die without an antidote. And for top experts, although the poison fruit is powerful, it is not too much to deal with. But no matter how you say it, the poison fruit, as a superhuman devil fruit ability, can be classified as the top devil fruit power. This is absolutely no problem. After all, there is no truly invincible devil fruit in this world. Even Enel, the user with the ability of the thunder fruit, was still beaten by Luffy to the point of falling from godhood and doubting his life. Have you gone to outer space to find your spiritual home? Therefore, the poison fruit is still very valuable, and it is worth taking the risk for this devil fruit. Thinking of this, Orgrim looked at Beckman again. It would be nice if Beckman could eat this poisonous fruit, right? It's just that this move is obviously a bit of a trick to his younger brother. After all, although the poison fruit is very powerful, it has considerable side effects. Magellan couldn't control his mouth. After eating the poisonous fruit, he almost ended up living in the toilet. Yes, if you eat the poisonous fruit, you will most likely have diarrhea for the rest of your life. Therefore, although Orgrim knew how powerful the poison fruit was, after thinking about it, he decided not to eat it. Being strong or not is a temporary matter, but being handsome is a lifelong matter. If one day I become a big boss and suddenly disappear when Marineford, the naval headquarters, is facing off against big shots like warring states, how embarrassing would it be? Will I be able to hang out in the future? Vaguely, Orgrim seemed to understand why that guy Magellan was willing to be a warden in Imperial, because he has diarrhea. Maybe if it hadn't been for his diarrhea, he might have changed his career to become an admiral in the Navy, and he wouldn't have been subject to the world draft. Maybe the world government and the Navy headquarters were also afraid that Magellan would suddenly be beaten up and lose the face of the Navy and the world government, so they placed him in an isolated place like Impelton, right? After understanding this truth, Orgrim completely put an end to the idea of eating poisonous fruits. For this kind of good thing, as good brothers, naturally the elder brother gives way to the younger brother, and it's you, Ben Beckman. But Orgrim is a person with a bottom line after all, and he feels that before this, he needs to get to know Beckman to some extent. But he couldn't say clearly that he knew the side effects of poisonous fruit, otherwise he couldn't explain it. After all, he was also a country bumpkin. So after thinking about it for a while, Orgrim decided to mention it in a more subtle way to see what Beckman had in mind. Beckman, if you want to gain powerful power, you will naturally have to bear the corresponding risks and consequences. Do you think this is the truth? Orgrim looked at Beckman and asked. Beckman glanced at Orgrim in confusion. What did he say all of a sudden? Aren't they discussing poisonous fruits? Why did the topic escalate to such a high level all of a sudden? To a high level? But soon, he realized, yes, it must be Orgrim, the eldest brother, who is moved. He robbed the poison fruit from the Navy headquarters to gain powerful power. This kind of behavior, of course there are risks and consequences. After thinking about this truth, Beckman, who could have mistakenly understood this, said naturally, of course, there is no free lunch in the world. If you want to become stronger, you have to pay a corresponding price. When Orgrim heard Beckman's words, he also blamed himself for a while. Look at how aware Beckman's thoughts are. Unlike himself, who is not hesitant at all in the face of such things. Decisive. Should I say that he really deserves it? If he hadn't been holding him back, he would definitely have become a top pirate man in the future. Well, I must learn more from Beckman in the future. When three people are together, there must be my teacher. The ancients do not deceive me. Now that Beckman is so aware, Orgrim is not willing to delay his future. I saw Orgrim reaching out and patting Beckman on the shoulder. Under the confused expression on the other person's face, he was very heroic. He opened his mouth and said, "Okay, Beckman, since you are so aware, then I, the eldest brother, will help you even if I risk my life. I will definitely grab this poisonous fruit for you." Beckman looked at Orgrim in confusion. He didn't know what had happened to his eldest brother. Why was he so excited all of a sudden? But when he heard what he said, it was obvious that he was thinking about himself. Yes. Because he wanted to eat a devil fruit, Brother Orgrim made up his mind to snatch things from the Navy headquarters for him. At this time, of course he couldn't back down. If he took a step back now, how to face Orgrim's kindness? How to follow his footsteps? Isn't it just to steal something from the Navy headquarters? What are you afraid of? Damn it! Thinking of this, Beckman also said boldly, "Brother, I will definitely live up to your kindness. Isn't it the Navy headquarters? Let's fuck." "Yes, fuck him," Orgrim also said very domineeringly. Hank and Gangplank, who were sitting next to him, also started shouting. Doflamingo was shocked at this time. "Damn it, your brotherhood is so strong. For the sake of brothers, do you snatch things from the Navy headquarters at will?" I was so moved that I almost cried. Look at my biological brother Rossi Nandi. No, he doesn't understand the difficulty of being an older brother at all. I ran away from home and don't know where I went. Alas, my family is really unlucky. Years later, after Doflamingo experienced more things about Rossi Nandi, a cheating brother, he felt extremely envious every time he thought of the friendship between the two Orgrim brothers today. But he didn't know that many years later, whenever Beckman thought about what happened today, he couldn't help but want to pull up his pants, rush out of the toilet, and poison the bastard Orgrim. Can you speak more clearly when you speak? Is there such a thing as cheating on a brother? After admiring Beckman's courage, Orgrim looked at Doflamingo again and said, "Young master, please tell us in detail about this matter. Who did the Navy headquarters send?" In Orgrim's view, for the sake of Beckman's courage, even if he was an admiral, he would try to seize food from the tiger's mouth. Otherwise, why would you be a big brother? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 20. In a certain area of the North Sea, a huge naval warship is sailing in this area. Looking at their direction, it seems to be heading towards the entrance of the upside-down mountain in the North Sea. Different from the general warships in the North Sea, this warship is much larger, obviously coming from the power of the Navy headquarters. And this ship is the ship of Commodore Bogart. His trip to the North Sea is to complete the Navy's mission and escort the superhuman poison fruit back to the Navy headquarters. Judging from their routes, today's warships should not be able to directly cross the windless zone, otherwise they would not have to go to such trouble to re-walk the first half of the great route. In the cabin of the warship, Commodore Bogart was looking helplessly at the man sitting in his position as captain. The man was talking to the phone bug on the table. It looked very casual, but the content of the conversation was very exciting. "That guy Shiji has already left behind. You bastard, come back to my headquarters right away. Why do you have to go through Upside Down Mountain? Isn't it closer to Marijoa?" The voice coming out of the phone was very irritable, as if he was scolding something. But the man sitting at the table didn't care at all. "If you want to ask why, it's because this man is the famous naval hero Monkey D. Cap. That's right, for some reason, Garp appeared here in Bihai. Maybe it has something to do with the big boss Shiji? Ha 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 ha, Warring States, don't be so impatient. Although that bastard chicken has left Bihai, who knows what he did here? You wouldn't come all this way just to destroy a small country, right? I have to figure out what's going on here, right?" this guy Garp said to the phone bug with a smile. "Stop making these excuses, I think you're just stalling for time, you bastard." The Warring States general first cursed Garp, then paused for a moment and asked again, "You know, right? Did that guy Kuzan tell you?" "I can't even understand what you are saying," Garp responded, pretending not to know anything. About being promoted to general, the Warring States general did not show off to Garp and cursed angrily. After hearing this, Garp was silent for a moment, then smacked his lips and said, "You know, I have no interest in this kind of thing, let alone therefore." He became the bodyguard of the Tianlong people. "What do you think of a general?" the Warring States general asked very angrily after hearing this. "Bondage," Garp responded without hesitation. This sentence made the Warring States side a little confused for a while. After a long time, Warring States said seriously, "There is no point in delaying time. The positions of the three generals, because you've been vacant for so long, aren't you still willing? Since delaying time is useless, just help me refuse and tell the world government that I will not become this general." Garp didn't hesitate at all and said in a very firm tone, "Bastard, come back and tell the marshal yourself about this kind of thing." When the Warring States general saw that Garp was not getting enough food and salt, he also said angrily, "Then let's wait until I get back. By then Brother Cyborg's anger will have dissipated." Garp, the cutthroat man, said indifferently. Then without waiting for Admiral Sengoku to say anything, Garp hung up the phone directly, simply, and rudely. At the same time, Marine Headquarters Marineford, Admiral Sengoku's in the office. "Hello? Bastard guy," the Warring States general cursed a few times, and then put down the phone bug in his hand. "That guy is really disturbing." Consultant Ahe had a smile on his lips. He sat aside and looked at the Warring States general and said, "If Kuzan is not that bastard, if he tells Garp any news, I will imprison him for 10 days, the Warring States general complained. He couldn't deal with Garp, the Navy's bastard, but he should have no problem dealing with Kuzan, the little major general. He might consider this a holiday." General Zifa was also sitting on the other side. He took up this sentence and said with a smile. When Warring States thought of Kuzan's bastard character, he shook his head helplessly. Maybe that's true? He didn't dwell on this issue anymore. The Warring States general looked at General Staff Ahe and asked, "Now that Shiji has left Bihai, he can relax his focus on that side. The top priority is to find a way to restore the situation in the New World." "Not that simple." Chief Staff Officer Ahe murmured softly at first. Then she raised a pile of documents in her hand and asked, "So, do you still want to read the recent news about Bihai?" The Warring States general hesitated for a moment after hearing this, then nodded and said, "Since you have brought them all, better take a look." "That's some interesting news." Advisor Ahe smiled and handed over the document in his hand. "Good news," the Warring States general took it and asked. "No, embarrassing bad news. Our 103 branch in Bihai was looted by pirates." Consultant Ahe said in an understatement. The Warring States General, who was holding a teacup in one hand and a document in the other, heard this and spit out a sip of old tea. Puff, wiping his mouth, the Warring States General frowned and asked, "Did Shiji's people do it?" "No, see for yourself, it was done by a group of guys from the North Sea, called the Warhammer Pirates." Senior Staff Officer Ahe shook his head and said. "Warhammer Pirates?" General Zifa murmured, and then laughed. "It's really an ordinary name." The Warring States General opened the document and read it, frowning from time to time. "Is this guy named Kazgarot Orgrim really bold, targeting our navy for the first time?" the Warring States General murmured at first. Then he looked at some documents at the back. It mentioned the bounty proposal for Kazgarot Orgrim, which was 85 million baileys. Too high. The Warring States General hesitated. "It is indeed very high in the North Sea, and it is not low in the Grand Line, but it is not too exaggerated. This guy named Orgrim seems to be very hostile to our navy and the world government, and is specifically targeting nobles and navy attack, judging from the threat level, barely worthy." Consultant Ahe opened his mouth and analyzed it. The Warring States General nodded and felt that it made sense. He did not take this Orgrim seriously. Judging from his experience, what is the name of the Warhammer Pirates? People are basically just salty fish and can't afford to make waves. Giving him a reward of 85 million is considered a kind of flattery. Maybe he will be killed by some bounty hunter in a few days. Thinking about it this way, it was still a good deal. Therefore, the Warring States General did not hesitate any more. He signed his name on the document and agreed to the proposal. "Okay, let's talk about the situation in the New World." The Warring States General handed the document back to Chief Ahe, and then said. General Zifa heard the words and said, "The beast pirates seem to have entered Wano country, but because the news there is very closed, there is still no news there. Not confirmed yet."